Welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. Tonight, courtesy there of our great buddy in the community, Aaron Kalinowski and Aaron's Journey, we are joined by Louis Scarantino. I got to tell you two things. By the way, my name is Arantino, by the way, and I love that last name, Scarantino. That is the coolest last name to be on any show. You got to have a name like Scarantino. You
Thank you.
probably know the question that I always like to ask. Who is Louis Scarantino? Your hour starts now. I will mute my microphone and sit back and relax. The whole journey. Go.
Okay. My name is Louis Scarantino, and I am an autism advocate, author, and motivational speaker. And I was born in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and I grew up in Old Forge, Pennsylvania. And I've written a couple books. Finding Love on the Spectrum, an ASD Guide to Dating, and Autism: The Unstoppable Achiever. Both are available on Amazon. I've spoken at a couple conferences, which are the 2023 PA Life Sharing Conference and the 2024 Virtual Wellness Vitality Summit. And my inspiration for all I do with my writings and speakings are when I followed my dream years ago, in 2013 in Las Vegas, Nevada. When I met Shania Twain, my one of my favorite female singers of all time, and she brought me on stage years ago in Las Vegas, and that was an incredible moment, and it still influences all I do today. Um, but before that, I really had a lot of struggles. I had a tough high school life. I was bullied by teachers and principals and all that. And, I struggled with schoolwork, reading comprehension, all that. And then, even though I had a tough high school life, I decided to go on to college, I originally majored in computer information systems, but then I switched to office management technology. I got all A's and B's in my classes, even though I was very hard on myself and wanted to quit. But I still managed to graduate cum laude. And I had a girlfriend in college. I won't give names for privacy reasons, but we were on a date at a Red Robin restaurant one night, and she was telling me about Shania Twain. And I go home that night and I downloaded some of her music on iTunes, and I remembered a song when I was a little boy that used to come on the radio, and my sister and her friend in the back seat used to sing along to it all the time. It's called "You're Still the One," and I remembered that song, and I realized that she hasn't been performing at that time and she was just coming back to the stage for the first time in many years. And I went to I heard she was coming back to Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace, and I decided to ask my mother if she would take me to Las Vegas, to see one of her shows. And my mom said if I paid for it, so I gambled $2,000 instead of gambling at the casino in Las Vegas. I decided to gamble at $2,000 on the trip. After hearing that she was going to bring some fans on stage during the shows, and decided to and I planned it all out. I got tickets on the end row, and when I got to the show, I made my mom sit next to me, and I sat on the end, and I was like in the eighth row. And and when she was calling fans up, towards the time when it was time to bring fans on stage during the shows, I decided to walk up there, even though there was a security guard right behind me, and she said to come on up. And that's what really inspired all I do today. And after sitting next to her for three songs, I went to, I've given many speeches today. I've written articles all over the internet. I've written, including my two books that I told you about earlier. And it continues to inspire all I do. I have another conference coming up in September, which is the Missouri Behavioral Health Conference. And I'm also speaking on another online gig called the Trauma Wise Parenting Summit in September as well into October. And I really want to make a full-time living off speaking, even though even though I came from a tough high school life but I graduated college cum laude, and I followed my dream, and now I want to, I really want to continue making a difference in the lives of people all around the world on the autism spectrum and any disability, not just autism, all disabilities too. So, but a little bit more about, my past. Well, I don't know how many more minutes I got left, but I'll continue to talk for a little while longer. Um, I just, my father and my mother, were divorced, years ago. And they were separated. I got separate. I lived with my mom and I had a stepdad and I have my stepmom and I have a couple siblings and they were really supportive of everything I do and they were tough on me but they were really supportive and they were really loving and that's what really kept me motivated to continue to follow all my dreams and achieve all my goals. And my mother got me all the services I needed, like therapy, psychiatry, and speech language therapy, which I talk about in some of my speeches and some of my books. And I just and she and today I get a little help with a little bit of money management, and I get a little help with behavioral behavioral issue therapy at the same time. And I continue to take medication for my mood and emotions. And I continue to, and job finding, I'm still trying to find the right job until I become a full-time speaker, which is a long-term goal. But in the meantime, the bills still got to get paid and I got to continue to to keep my apartment in neat order, which somebody comes and helps me clean once a week, so cause that's a little bit of a struggle of mine. And cooking, I can cook, but I can only cook very simple things. So I got somebody through my waiver in my state, and they help me like cook, clean, manage all my behavioral therapies with them as well. And they help with all those services. And my mom pushing me to get all those services, my stepdad pushing me to get all those services, my siblings very supportive of all those services. And that's what keeps me going today. And what else would I like to say? I like traveling. I like music. I like movies. I like I like researching. I like eating eating out at restaurants when I try my favorite food is Mexican food. I love all that and I love meeting new people. I like hanging out with friends when I can, even though most of my friends moved away. But I'm working on making new friends so I could, start hanging out with people again. I like shooting pool. I should join a league eventually. I used to like bowling. I used to go to Toastmasters years ago, and I met a lot of people there. That helped me like with my public speaking and all that. And but yeah, that pretty much sums up most of my background. I hope for a very bright future. I would like to I don't know how much yeah, I would like to like ask you, would you like me to like elaborate any further? Like, do you have any questions for me or?
Well, absolutely, I do. And absolutely, that was an incredible monologue to get us going tonight, man. Absolutely. You need to know something that you absolutely have a friend here in Aaron's opinion in our great podcast community. You have a forever friend here in my community. Even when others don't give you a chance. Says, come on over to Aaron's opinion. We always want your business, and we always care.
Perfect.
Several things that you said to me that really spoke to me. Yes, the bullying and all the various challenges in schooling. Yeah, that really affected me as well. I was also brutally bullied in middle school, especially, and then in high school too, by varieties of people, whether they be students or staff or whomever. But this was a fairly common occurrence and always an issue. So absolutely, that really affects people with disabilities. So thank you for speaking out on that.
Sure, anytime.
So yeah, so you've written some books. You've accomplished more than most. Written some books, graduated, cum laude. So I have spoken to many people who want to write books. Why don't you walk through for a bit the writing process and how that works? A lot of people come to me and say, I want to write a book, but I don't know how. So how does that work, publishing these books?
Sure. So what I'll say is, it's very, very difficult to do. I mean, it's very difficult to sell books. I will say that, especially in the self-publishing route, because, it's very hard to get traditional contracts these days, when it comes to books, which I still haven't done yet in my writing career. I'm still waiting for my first, like, my speak, actual publishing contract where I get a traditional publisher. So I self-published both of my books. And first of all, I will say that, when I wrote these books, I just started writing my thoughts, that came to mind. I'll start with how I wrote on Autism, the Unstoppable Achiever, because that's actually, was a revival of my very first book. My first book didn't really work out for a couple reasons. For personal reasons, I discontinued it, and then I revived it. Like after making some edits, some further editing, and rewrote a lot of it, and then I republished it again under a different title. When I originally wrote that book, I came to I started writing the first thing that came to mind, whether it was a lot of my early beginnings, like I talked about here on this episode, and when it came to my early life, when I was born, to my struggles in elementary school and in high school, to my triumphs in college, and then a little bit, like when I met my idol, and and a little bit after that. I just wrote the first things that came to mind. And sometimes that takes a while to think about though when people are writing books. Like they may not know, like, well, what am I going to say? What am I going to write? That's because you're putting you're giving your information public, and you want to be careful. Like, well, what you're giving out publicly and all that. So but that's why the editing process happens. When it came to publishing the books, though, I decided to go with Amazon because I've read a lot about their self-publishing programs. Although I'm still learning myself, who are the best self-publishers, who are the best traditional publishers. Like when it came to publishing books, and I didn't really sell that many. But even in my second book, like when I was talking about when it came to my dating experiences, the first things that came to mind are, like all my failed first dates, all my, a couple of my failed relationships, and even, like my failed online chats and all that. And all that stuff came together, and I was able to make like one book out of it. I will say though that when I went on Aaron Kalinowski's, who's with us today, when I went on his podcast, he asked me. I remember him asking me, when it came to some of my writings, do you know what do you, why do you tend to use pop culture in, why do you reference pop culture a lot in your writings? I don't remember. I haven't listened to the episode in a while, so I don't remember exactly how I answered it. But I will say that I tend to use pop culture a lot in a lot of my writings because I'm a big fan of pop culture and I use a lot of pop culture in my daily life, whether it's talking to people or whether it's watching YouTube videos or creating stuff. All my creatings because I really I'm just obsessed with a lot of popular culture. So that's why I like to use it in my writings and all that. And so people when it came to writing books, people when it came not only talk about their lives, but it's something they're like interested in too, like include some of that in the books. You know, like whether it doesn't have to be popular culture, it could be anything. Like whether like if you like talk, I mean, I'm sorry to sound a little sensitive here, but a lot of people like to talk about politics and which I don't like, but a lot of people like that stuff. And if they want to include that some of that, you know, in their books, you know, if it's relevant to their content, maybe try use some of that. If they like something else, you know, maybe use some of that, you know and maybe and that's what and so I and that could be and that could make the book a little more interesting. So that's pretty much sums up, you know the book writing process that I've done, and I'll leave it there.
Absolutely. You also highlighted that you always like to talk about pop culture in your books, right? So, what is it about pop culture? And exactly, I mean, I of course I know what it means. How do you include pop culture in your books? And exactly how does it come across? How do you kind of uh, blend and mélange pop culture with your writing?
Well, I tend to think of the popular culture references that I like, whether it's some of my favorite movies or whether it's some of my favorite music. I remember writing in my one book, my Autism, the Unstoppable Achiever. I referenced Belinda Carlisle's song, "Heaven Is a Place on Earth." Because that's one of my favorite '80s songs. So that's what so I just tend to the first the favorites of of popular culture, and that's how I include it. Like anything that's a favorite of mine. I don't. Sometimes it could like, and even in the beginning of my book of Autism, the Unstoppable Achiever, I might have. I think I remember including Richard Nixon's iconic phrase when he was president back in the day: "Sex, drugs, and rock and roll." I included that a little bit, you know, in my one book, and so anything, so it just depends on, what I'm like, what the topic is. Like if I'm talking if a section of the book I'm talking about, decision making, that's why I might have that's made me think of Richard Nixon's phrase. And when I was talking about Belinda Carlisle's song, "Heaven Is a Place on Earth," I was thinking of, like some of my accomplishments. It's like I was in heaven, accomplishing all those accomplishments. So that's why I thought of her song, "Heaven Is a Place on Earth," and it is one of my favorite '80s songs. Um, and also what my one article on the Mighty, I was when in the year, I think it was 2016. I'm pretty sure it was 2016 when the NBA basketball team, the Golden State Warriors, broke the 95 Bulls Chicago Chicago best NBA record, which was 72-10. The Golden State Warriors broke it 73-9. That year, Steve Kerr, the head coach, wore an Autism puzzle pin while coaching a game. I saw it on Facebook, and I wrote him a letter that year, to thank him for wearing that to support the cause. And I wrote a whole article about it. It's on the internet, and I reference a lot of pop culture in that article. So just like like whatever coming to like whatever's going on at the time. It just depends on what the topic is.
Absolutely, sure. Yeah. So, the other thing that I really want to get into is I think a lot of our listeners would want to know. So, Lewis, what what can you tell me? What do you know about the history of autism? What do you know about autism? What is autism? Really break it down for those of us who don't know.
Sure. Um, Autism is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects how people perceive the world and affects their could affect how they communicate, how they interact, and there's been a lot of studies done about autism. There's the one some there's been a lot of myths and misunderstandings about autism. One of them includes, that vaccines cause autism, which was a myth like in 1998 that came out in the British Medical Journal. Although some people still believe it, some people don't believe it. And that's and some people like they and other facts about autism include issues with communication, sensory challenges, so like and other psychological factors. It's not considered a mental health condition, but a lot of people on the autism spectrum do experience mental health issues like anxiety and depression, including myself. And there's a lot of and there's myths that people on the autism spectrum do not are not intelligent. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. As a matter of fact, they say that people on the spectrum are very, very intelligent, compared to lots. And there's other facts that bad parenting the myths that bad parenting caused autism, which couldn't be farther from the truth. And there's also there's been a lot of studies done that the older the father during conception, the higher the risk for autism. So there's really no one way to talk about autism. There's loads of factors, loads of variables. I was able to answer some of it for you. I'm still learning more. As I have speeches written, and as I write my speeches, and as I do my research, I learn more, and I answer like other people, and I talk to others, about the research I've done, and yes, those are some of the factors and some of the myths and some of the causes, and yeah.
Absolutely, yes. That's a really, really great answer to that question. I think that really helps people to understand. Yeah, no, and for the records, for the record, no. The answer is no. Vaccines do not cause autism. So let's get
Yes,
let's get that let's get that out of the way. That
yes,
happens every.
absolutely. Yes.
That's always now. I mean, I think that there is some truth to the fact that the environment that children are brought up in, the environment, whether it's socially, environmentally,
Definitely,
climate wise, I think the environment certainly plays some role, but most of it
definitely. Yep.
is a genetic thing to some extent, to a greater extent of the imagination. It's our family history, right? Our gene pool is what truly determines that one way or the other,
Yeah,
ultimately.
yeah, and
Go ahead.
I actually did not bring that up. I'm glad you brought that up because actually that's one part of my speech that I'm going to be giving in September.
Hmm.
That I'm going to be talking about a lot of those genetic and environmental factors that you brought up, and family history. Those could be some of the like the causes of autism. You're right about the vaccines. Even though some parents still believe it. But we're on the same page about that. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up the environmental and genetic factors because those are some of the causes for autism. I just wanted to clarify that with you.
Absolutely. Great. Great, great. The other huge thing that I really appreciate, and I appreciate it for a very specific reason, is how you seeked out the services that you needed. Now, in the disability community, whether you're blind or on the autism spectrum, we always need services from our community, whether it's counseling, education, a variety of things. And my parents also had to stand up to the school system where I lived as well growing up. So I'm very familiar about being an advocate and advocacy and the importance of that. So what is your whole, philosophy about advocacy and speaking up for yourself and getting the right services? What advice do you have? This is a major issue in the community.
Yes, I will, first of all, I will say that there can be barriers to getting services, for people in the autism community and or any disability, not just autism, even including people that are blind, including people that, who have other types of disabilities. There could be barriers, whether it's finding them, affording them, or having long wait lists. Those are some of the barriers of having some of those services that people may need. I was fortunate enough, to not have, to not have to have those barriers. But I know there are a lot of people who are struggling because they have those barriers to getting those services. So people need to start like speaking like I think there needs to be like more hiring, like to to for job, they need to have more jobs available, for people, for people to give these services so the wait list could go down because people really need this, including myself. I needed services because I was struggling for a long time. And I needed services like behavioral therapy, money management counseling, and even even psychiatry counseling as well. Um, I would have had to wait a long time, but my mother was in the field, so that's why I didn't have to wait so long. But there's other people who might have to wait longer, and I just feel that employment needs to go up in those jobs, and then maybe that's one way. And maybe they need to maybe they need to also do more, do more research, about these programs to make them improve better. So people could, could afford them better. More people need to get on Medicaid, because sometimes Medicaid pays for these services. People need to, I think that the states maybe need to stop rejecting so many people Medicaid applications, to give it to the people who really need it, and people who are getting Medicaid fraudulently, shouldn't be. They should give it to the people who really need it, so the wait list can go down, and the people who need health care to get those services can get them. Um, and more and we all need to speak up, to our governments, to our representatives, and to everybody who's involved in these types of and who's involved in these things, so we can get the services we need and not have those barriers, to having those services.
Yeah, you're very right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's so hard to speak up and it's so hard to know what services you need and things like that. So are you on many because I know I am. I'm in many Facebook groups for people who are blind. So are you in many Facebook groups for people who are on the autism spectrum? What's your whole perception and your whole philosophy behind social media?
Well, I am in some Facebook groups on for people on the spectrum. Now each one is different. They're because everybody has different beliefs, about autism. Some people you rather use identity first language. Most people who have autism like to use identity first language, including myself. But there's others, who rather use person first language. And there's some people, who don't like the word, who don't like Asperger's, and which I am in one of those groups because some people don't like using the Asperger's term. Some people don't like using the word autistic, so they don't join those particular groups who believe in that stuff, because each one is different. I like to see both sides of everything, so that's why I join them all, and I always follow the rules of each group, so I don't get kicked, so I don't get, banned or anything. But But social media can be tough because people on the internet could be very brutal, and they especially of people who they don't see on a daily basis and they're not going to see in person. It's more comfortable, to be brutal to somebody on social media rather than in person. So I tend to like stay away from social media a lot. And rather just, speak on it, whether it's my media interviews or rather it's my own, like my own zone, whether it's my friends or family who I'm familiar with, rather than strangers I don't know. So that's pretty much my perspective on social media.
You're very right. Yeah. Social media can be very brutal. And I think you put your finger right on the problem is that people think that we will forget or that we won't actually meet these people in real life. Well, you never know who you might meet at some convention. So you
Yeah.
always have to be careful what you say to someone, on social media. Next thing you know, you're at some convention, some banquet, and then the person sitting next to you, oh yeah, that person. You got to be
Yeah.
you got to be careful. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you have these books out, and are they on Audible, by the way?
I used to have audiobooks. It didn't really work out. I might consider using Audible again. Right now they're only available through paperback and Kindle. But maybe I'll consider using Audible again. To accommodate the people who are either blind or who can't read. I personally don't know how to record an audiobook. I had somebody do it for me the last time. Maybe I can consider going that route again. So yeah, they're currently not available on Audible at this time.
That's fine. Yeah, you may want to set something up and get them on Audible so blind people could listen. That just hang. That is good. Audible can be a very good source for publishing your materials. Yeah. Definitely. Okay, what are so I think you've done a lot of public speaking, right? So how does public speaking work? And what are some fun or well, not fun, but what are some funny or some hilarious things that happened maybe when you were public speaking? I mean, audiences and crowds can be a lot of fun. So talk about an unusual experience you had while public speaking.
Sure. When I was at Toastmasters, I have quite some stories on the public speaking on my speaking journey. I will start by saying, one time when I was just starting out, um, I I gave a speech at Toastmasters, and I remember when I was giving this speech, I was talking about my moment with Shania Twain, and I remember I was still learning that I was learning how to move, like properly, like giving movements while speaking, but I ended up like moving too much. I moved back and forth too much, and it drove the audience crazy. And I use that as a learning experience today by either staying in one place, or, but I moved naturally when, when I gave my speech in Canada, years ago. So I tend to learn from, that experience. Another like experience I had with public speaking is when I spoke in Canada. I was making I tend to be very humorous in that speech, and a lot of pe and a lot of the audiences loved my humor, and they loved my jokes and all that. Even though you don't necessarily have to be funny in speaking, but it could be beneficial. And I remember I was like interacting with the audience, as I was giving those jokes, to know like I was with them, as they were like taking the jokes in. And the last thing I'm gonna say is the other times, when I was public speaking, like the questions and answers parts of my public speaking, those can be a little bit difficult because sometimes when I don't have all the answers to people's questions when they have for me after I give a speech. I answer even in my media interviews, sometimes I don't exactly have all the answers, to what people are asking me. But so what I do in those situations is I answer to the best of my ability. And also something I keep in mind is that, people, like even in professional media, like professionals, like whether it's celebrities or whether it's politicians, sometimes they don't have all the answers either. Or maybe they just don't want to give the answers, like to media interview questions. So they tend to just answer a question any way they want. So because whatever you give, like to, a question to the media, they're going to write that in their story and it's going to be on the internet forever. And maybe like a certain like celebrity or a certain politician doesn't want that to be on the internet forever. So they just answer it in any way they want, or make something up, and then that's how the reporter or whoever's giving the interview writes their story. So that's kind of what I also keep in mind, when it comes to my questions and answers, in my own speeches.
Absolutely. Yeah, you shouldn't be too hard on yourself because there's always things that we can do to improve, right? And there's never such a thing as a perfect speech or a perfect experience. There's always little things that don't go perfectly.
Yes.
So you're pretty humorous. Like, can you give me a little stand-up comedy?
Um, I will say, I will say what I said in that one speech. I like, I'll start by saying, the one thing I'll say is that, part of my speech. I remember when I was 5 years old, when I was 2 years old, I couldn't speak. But obviously I'm speaking now because I'm up here talking to all of you, right? So that was one joke I gave, and everything. And all the audience, a lot of the audience just laughed at it and everything, and they all found it very funny and humorous. And I kind of interacted with those audiences there. So, I'm not the best at making jokes, but sometimes somebody has to help me make the jokes and everything. So I could be a little more humorous and beneficial in my speeches. But sometimes it just comes, you have to let it come out naturally. Sometimes you can't try too hard. You just gotta let it come out naturally. And then, and then they laugh, and then then you don't, and then you realize, I don't have to try so hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is all very interesting, for sure. So, what are some of your future plans and future goals that you want to work on?
Well, I would like to, I maybe go back to college someday. I don't know what I'll major in yet. That's one thing. I would like to speak at more conferences, and schools and corporations, and I would like to, have a relationship again. And even though that's hard for people on the spectrum, but it is possible. And also, maybe have a better financial situation and maybe a house. And yeah, those are some of my future goals.
I agree. I agree. Are you planning to write any more books? How many more books do you think you will write?
I'm currently on writer's block. I haven't written in a long time, mainly because I've been preparing for my speeches. I do want to write, I do want to do some follow-ups, to some of my books though, because some of those books are a little outdated. So I want to write at least two more, to follow up on some of those, books, on those two books I written because they are outdated.
Yeah, yeah. When did you publish those books?
Years ago, well, the one book I published in 2019, and the one book I republished again. It was originally published in 2016, but then I republished it again. I think it was 2021.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot because a lot has changed from 2021 to today. There's been a lot of changes for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and even in my life,
Hmm.
a lot changed since those times and everything. And people who are reading my books might say, "Gee, like what's what happened? Like what happened next? What's going on in his life today and everything." and even some of the things I talked about, in those books, can he elaborate on today's issues in some of his future books? And people are wondering, probably why I haven't published a book in a while when the many other authors are out there publishing a lot. So yeah, eventually I got to get off writer's block, and I gotta start writing again and start like following up on a lot of those like today's issues in my future books.
Sure, absolutely. Have you thought about getting into podcasting? Because I find that creating audio content is very therapeutic.
Well, I tried podcasting once. I could try it again. I it was short-lived because I didn't know exactly. I might have to learn from other podcasters, including my sister who has a podcast. Like how to do it, whether it's editing or whether it's the right equipment I have to use, how to like make them to, because when I did podcasting, I made both episodes into a few parts, and I want to make it into like one whole episode, and I have to learn how to do that. So that way, and also how to like find guests, for my podcast, because I know some people could find like really good guests, and I don't know how to do that. So yeah, those were some of the barriers that caused my podcast to be short-lived. But maybe I will try it again, if I can solve some of these issues.
Please do. Please get back into the industry of podcasting because you definitely have a huge personality, man. And well, to get guests on a podcast, what you have to do is you have to ask Aaron Klonowski. Nobody gets better guests than Aaron Klonowski. He is so good at getting us connected with so many great people. So the getting the guests is talk to Aaron Klonowski.
Yeah, I'll have to talk to him. Yes.
That's the really easy part. And over time, you kind of build your network, as we say. You build your network over time, and you build up your confidence, and you build up your ability to reach out to people over years of doing it. Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, well, like, what does your sister podcast about?
Well, she has a little bit of a different field, I mean, I could definitely ask her, how she does podcasting and how she gets guests, but her niche is a little bit different than mine. Like she focuses on not drinking alcohol or not smoking anymore, and not like and also physical wellness, rather than mental health.
Okay.
She might do a little bit of mental health, but I never really listen to her podcast. I have to listen to it eventually. I don't really listen to a lot of podcasts. That's probably why. It has nothing to do with her. I love her and everything. So it's not, it has no reflection on her. It's just that I don't always listen to podcasts and all that. Eventually I got to listen to them though, because I can find a lot of interesting stuff on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, eventually, maybe you could help Aaron's opinion to get in touch with her because she's always welcome. Always great to have the next person who's a fellow podcaster who talks about physical health. I think that's critically important. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. So when you aren't doing all this great stuff, what are some of your like main hobbies that you want to improve on, man, or some activities you really enjoy doing?
I really want to improve on yeah, I do want to get into exercising a little more because I could do a little bit better, with exercising. I also want to like I also want to get into back into shooting pool and get better at that. And I also want to get into get find I also want to get back into my writing skills a little more. And and maybe learn how to play a sport, if I get into shape.
Sounds good to me. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, well, that is all extremely well done. And I just cannot thank you enough for taking the time to join us today.
Anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have a few moments left, as we say, a few moments left today. Um, what are some, because I'm sure that you have questions for Aaron Richmond and Aaron's opinion. So, as I like to say, and sometimes I say it towards the end of my show, at the end of our show, but I'll say it now. So if you can ask me some questions to really make me sweat, to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster, what do you want to know about me?
Sure. What inspired you to be a podcaster?
The thing that inspired me to be a podcaster is I wanted a place where other people like you can come up to my microphone and share your opinion. So the truest answer or the most authentic answer is you. You and all the other guests inspired me to create an environment where all of you can come up to the microphone and talk about what you want to talk about.
Okay.
Additionally, during the pandemic, I was listening to a lot of podcasts in the blindness community. And what I mean by this is there are many podcasts created by blind people for blind people. In other words, podcasts that sounds just like that, created by a blind person for another blind person. The only problem is that these podcasts are amazing. They definitely are. And they were not always open to my opinions. And if you haven't heard anything tonight already, you can tell that I can't shut up. And I really want to tell you all my opinions, whether you're interested in them or not. So I wanted to create a space here at Aaron's Opinion where we can just come up to the microphone and have a great, compelling conversation. And that's really what inspired me. So I guess me realizing that we need to create this space for people to come up to this microphone. This is not only an activity that I enjoy, which I do, but it's an activity that's needed within our community for our community to be healthier and better off.
Okay. And I'll follow up with that by how long have you been doing podcasting?
I've been podcasting since 2020, so kind of at the height of the pandemic is when I got into it. The
Okay.
show has been restarted several times, and I've, gotten several new microphones over the years, several new setups over the years, but this is the newest and the most up-to-date setup that you're experiencing right now.
Okay. And my last question will be, before we start wrapping up, will be where would you like to see this show go in the future? Like, how would you like it to play out? As would you like it? Well, how would you like it to grow? If that makes any sense or
It
anything.
makes a lot of sense because I want it to grow, but most importantly, I want to, and this is very important as a podcaster, I want to create a podcast, keep doing this obviously, but I want to attract the right audience and the right guests. And it's a very tricky equation because like you were saying before, Louis, we live in a online crazy world where people feel the need to say whatever pops into their head. And and that's a real problem. So you'll get in the podcast space, you'll get guests that don't work out. You'll get interviews that never happen. You'll get people that don't like what you say. So I do want to try to fine tune over a period of time, try to figure out who is this truly meant for? Who are the audience members? And obviously you're one of them, and so is Aaron. But over time, I hope to be able to keep doing it as I will and keep strengthening the listener base to be the right people and getting even stronger and stronger guests.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
all that's very good stuff.
Well, thank you. Okay. Well, speaking of good stuff, we have a couple people who I'm sure have a question. Let's go over here to the virtual studio, over out to the audience, as we say. I'm sure you have a question, Aaron. Go ahead. It takes it a second.
No, take your time.
It takes the software a second to unmute his microphone.
My bad. Anyway, kind of my question is, where do you see yourself going in like 5 to 10 years?
Me or
You.
yeah, me? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
Louis.
okay.
You, Louis.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. All right. Just want to make sure we got the right person.
No problem.
Yeah. So where I see myself going in 5 years, based on how my speaking career is going now, and actually, I just got into a speaking agency, who are not actively representing me, but I just got in, but I have got into like a database of speakers, who, are like a list of speakers who are recommended. For primarily corporations. So I hope to speak to many corporations, whether it's Google or whether it's, or whether it's some of those other corporations, on autism and whether it's autism in the workplace or whether it's autism, in other areas. I hope to speak to many of those corporations and get paid for those gigs. and maybe get major media appearances while doing those gigs. And yeah, and that's where I hope to see myself in 5 to 10 years.
Wonderful. Absolutely great question, Aaron. Okay, last person here. I'm not sure who it is, but let's give them a chance here. iPhone 4. Go ahead. What is your question for Louis? Okay. Maybe they don't have a question. Okay. Okay, well anyway, if someone wants to get in touch with Louis Scarantino, how would they get in touch with Louis Scarantino?
Yes. So I will say that I have a couple ways you can reach me.
Okay.
You can visit my website at www.louisscarantino.com, or you can email me at book, which is like a reading book Louis Scarantino at gmail.com.
Sounds good. Sounds very, very good. Well, I'm sure I'm sure yeah. I'm sure that you will definitely get some new emails. In fact, excuse me. If you can actually send me a description, a little paragraph about yourself, Louis, I was going to ask you later, but it just came up so naturally. Yeah, if you could send me your description when you can, that would be good.
I
And then yeah. So we can have all your all your links and stuff like that. All
Absolutely.
right. All right. Well, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Louis Scarantino, thank you for joining us. Aaron Kalinowski, thank you for helping me get connected with Louis and many others. All right, then. Well, we will be back soon. As we like to say here at Aaron's Opinion, keep podcasting. We'll see you next time. And help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.